Saskatchewan companies operate. Ongoing efforts to control and mitigate the spread of the virus have placed a lot of challenges and restrictions on those who make their living off the international marketplace. Saskatchewan is a place rich in products and services for export with a relatively small local consumption base. So we, more than anywhere, need to keep the flow of goods and services to the world moving. We at STEP have been talking with members regularly, and we hear a lot of different views on how their business is doing in recent times. Some industries have actually seen their business pick up, particularly in agriculture and agri-food. While others have seen a recent slowdown, such as within the supply chains for mining, oil, and gas. We hear transportation of goods is still occurring with mostly moderate delays from what we've been hearing from our members in the transportation industry. Current challenges have had significant implications in how we pursue international business and will continue to do so into the foreseeable future. As an example, nearly every trade show and trade mission from now, at least until the end of summer, has been canceled or postponed, and we're seeing fall events experiencing some of the same. The upcoming spring and summer months are typically when we see a lot of international buyers visit our province to meet with current and prospective suppliers. With all the necessary travel restrictions, we're not expecting to see a lot of that in the near future. Here at STEP, we have undertaken a number of measures to deal with the current times and deliver the information to allow our members to have the best opportunities to succeed with the recent challenges. We have always looked to deliver timely information and opportunities to our members through our ongoing seminar program, and we'll continue to do that through webinars such as this. And last week we had our first virtual trade mission with a food buyer from Chile, and we'll continue to do more of these in the upcoming weeks and months. At all times where possible, STEP looks to work with the people and resources available to our exporters in international markets. That is not only with Canada's Trade Commissioner Service, but we also work with international trade consultants such as IBG Global. These in-market professionals are extremely important to enable our members to get the information they need to make the right decisions on markets and to find qualified customers, distributors, importers, business partners, and others so integral in doing business outside of our province. So today we are more than pleased this morning to welcome IBG Global and some members of its international network to give us a snapshot on how COVID-19 is affecting many of the markets that we do business in and the challenges and opportunities that exist under these trying circumstances. I know it's 2020, but I'm still always amazed that sitting here in my office in Saskatoon over roughly a 1.5 hour time period, I can hear from international experts from Israel, Germany, India, South Africa, and Brazil, and I'm very much looking forward to what they have to say. There will be the opportunity to ask questions at the end of each individual presentation. So again, Sherwin will explain this, but use the chat function, or if you're having problems, email these to myself, and time permitting, we'll see that they are addressed. We also ask to identify when you're asking a question, which speaker you're directing the question to. And for anyone who wants to email a question, my email address was included with the event notice. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Sherwin Pomerantz, who is the president of AdTid EDI Limited and the chair of IBG Global, an association of private commercial consulting firms with offices and staff around the world. Sherwin will be moderating the event for his colleagues, so I won't be giving Sherwin too much of an introduction as he will be speaking on his organization. I will say he's an accomplished international business expert and an individual who took the time to visit us back in September 2019 here in Saskatchewan. So with that, I'll turn the webinar over to Sherwin.
Hey, Brad, thank you very much. And I want to thank you and the entire group over at STEP in Saskatchewan for making it possible for us to do this webinar today. We're honored to be with you, and we're hopeful that your members will find what we're going to present of interest. I want to also talk for a minute or two about the framework. You'll see our presentation on the screen. Obviously, the people who are speaking will be featured as they speak. We will stop for questions after each presentation. There are 4 presentations. They will stop for 5 minutes for questions. We would ask that if you have questions during the presentation, that you use the chat function. It's at the bottom of your screen, and if you click it, you can send a chat to me. My name is Sherwin, and raise your question, and then at the end of each quarter presentation, we'll summarize those questions, and the presenter will have an opportunity to come back with answers. Our speakers this morning, you'll see, are, if we can get this thing moving. There we go. Let me tell you a minute before I get to the speakers. IBG is an organization of 21 partnering companies. 5 of us are with you today. We have 60 staffed locations, and we cover over 150 country markets. We're the only international organization of its type that has people on the ground in so many locations, and the yellow dots in this presentation show you that. The speakers this morning will be covering 4 distinct regions. They'll be covering Asia, they'll be covering South America, they'll be covering South Africa, the Middle East, and we'll start this morning with our speaker for Europe, and who is Dr. Linda van der Hees-Genther. She will make the presentation on behalf of Europe. So we now have to get her on the screen and allow her to speak. Otherwise, there we go. Go ahead. Linda, it's yours.
Thank you very much, Sherwin. Can you put my first slide, please? Good morning to everybody from late afternoon in Germany. And thank you for the opportunity to present Europe to you and to be the first speaker. My name is Linda van der Hees-Genther. I'm owner and CEO of HP International. We are based in Germany, Heidelberg and Berlin, and we are the partner of IBG Global in German-speaking Europe. I have 7 more colleagues in Europe, based in the UK, France, Benelux, Italy, Spain, Sweden, and CEE. And I will show you all the contact details and pictures at the end. We are all offering services for international business development. On one hand, for private companies, meaning corporate consulting, picking companies up from where they're standing in their international internationalization process, and bringing them at least 1 or hopefully more steps ahead in a very customized way. On the other hand, we're working for public EDOs and doing public trade promotion, and we have the whole toolbox for that. Some of us are doing as well FDI attraction, capacity building, and many more services. We are quite experienced partners at IBG Global. My company has been since 27 years on the market, and I myself have an experience of more than 20 years in international business. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to present you Europe in the remaining 14 minutes. If we talk about Europe, it's a challenge as well, because we're talking about 47 countries in Europe. If we narrow it down to the EU, we are still at 27 after Brexit. If we go to the Eurozone, still 19. So you see from there that it's impossible to name them all during the presentation. And this is why, after telling you about the COVID impact in Europe, in the different areas in Europe, and after saying some words about the restructuring scenarios in the 5 biggest economies in Europe, I will come up with trends we see all over Europe, so that I can somehow cover whole Europe. And I will show you how those trends influence opportunities, influence different sectors, specifically the target sectors I was asked to talk about in Saskatchewan: advanced manufacturing, biotech, mining, agricultural machinery. So let's start with the next slide. How is the situation in Europe? You see in the chart below a lot of colorful lines there representing each one European country, and the lines represent the death caused by COVID. It's a sad statistic. The black one is the European average one. And you see that some lines start earlier, already in February, the Italian one, for example, and the others only start in April, the Slovakian and Russian one. And if you ask me to do a sad statistic, a ranking of the main corona areas in Europe, I would say that the southern European countries are affected worst. First, Italy, second, Spain. On second place, I see the Western European countries like France, UK, Benelux, and German-speaking Europe. And then it comes to Scandinavia. And the lowest affected are the CEE ones, the Eastern ones, and countries like Slovakia, Russia, Ukraine, and Poland. Next slide, please. Yeah, what is the actual status of the economies and the predictions for the future? The production stop of non-essential industries have been only taking place in Italy and Spain, whereas Spain is already slowly reopening. Italy is still locked down until May 3rd. But on top of that, we had a lot of compulsory breaks in production due to falling demand, limited working capacity, and supply lags, not imposed by the government, but by those restrictions. And mainly those were in the mobility industry, automotive, aerospace, tourism. The good news is that we have taken after Easter already some initial steps for reopening the commerce, shops, and so forth in Germany, my country, but as well in Scandinavian and Eastern European countries. A lot of economic support programs have been issued to help basically small and medium-sized companies, but as well bigger companies. And I didn't put any number because it's very, very hard to keep track with. There's an update almost every day. But like almost everywhere, those were like financial support aids, loans, tax policy measures. But I would like to highlight in one instrument we have, that is the short-term work support that you don't have in Northern America. And this is made to keep skilled and qualified workforce, meaning that lost wages are compensated from 60 to 100% by the government, with the result that we all can keep our employees in Germany, for example, for 12 months, so that they are there for the recoverment. We don't have to fire them, and we will, this unemployment rates will not go up so fast like in the US, for example. What is the estimated most likely recovery scenario timeline? It's hard to tell, but we assume that in small steps in the second half of this year, the recovery will start. And in Q2, so from spring of next year, there will be a larger catch-up and carry-over effects, hopefully. Next slide, please. Yeah, to give you some statistics, IMF has recently published some statistics, and you see that with 7.5 minus in 2020, the euro area of the 19 countries is affected more than double than the world average of 3%. For next year, our growth rate is similar to the US and is still with 4.7 under the 5.8 on average. And if you look at the chart below, you see the individual country, again, a sad ranking: Italy minus 9%, Spain 8%, France and Germany minus 7%, and UK 6.5%. Let me say on the next slide, or show you some of the 5 biggest economies, the recovery scenarios, of course, in a very short way because I don't have enough time, but the longest recovery time will be for sure in Italy, with the most closing of companies. And from there, you will have a lot of M&A opportunities, specifically in the more industrialized northern Italian part. The second longest recovery scenario is for sure Spain. France, we are not really sure about the recovery time. There have been massive compulsory closures of non-essential industries, but on the other hand, we don't expect so many company insolvencies, only minus 15%, lower than in the UK or in the southern European countries. And the short-term instrument works very well. But of course, the question is, how will be the leadership of France in the EU affected? We don't know yet. UK, the recovery will take longer than average as well. UK is badly affected by COVID. And the other topic is Brexit. We don't know yet how the Brexit will exactly look like, but UK will be an individual market after that. So there will be some consequences on that. On the positive side, we see that there will be a lot of opportunities for the digitalization of the service industry. And UK has a strong tech focus and a lot of advantages in that. We see that by far the biggest stability expected will be in Germany, in my economy. We see that Germany will maintain the key position after COVID, and there will be the fastest opportunities for business development after recovery. And we see a lot of possibilities along the strategic value chain in the relocalization from Asia, and also in Germany's supply markets, Austria, Benelux, and CEE. Can you put the next slide, please? What are the trends we see in Europe? We see 5 trends. The first one is a big push towards digital transformation. We have a backlog in Europe, respect Northern American countries. And now we have to adapt closely with the pandemic in all our areas of private and business life, e-learning, e-commerce, e-administration, e-health, and so forth. And we see this trend as well in the industries. There will be an accelerated digitalization process, especially in SME businesses that have a backlog. Trend number 2, growing need of smart technologies, all the technologies enabling a pandemic economy like robots, cobots, and artificial intelligence. And this is trend number 3, we'll see an increasing automation as well in the agricultural sector. Due to an increasing demand for agricultural and food products we saw during COVID, which gives a push to efficiency and through the risk of workforce ability. On the one hand, local infections occur, but on the other hand, we usually have a seasonal immigrant workforce coming and moving from east to west for harvesting, for helping the agricultural, and due to the closure of the borders, it's almost not possible this year. Trend number 4 on the next slide is a reorganization, rebuilding of the global value chain that I mentioned already. There will be a reshoring from China due to the lacks of supplies, a shortening and diversification of supply chains. We see them on one hand in the nearshoring, so looking for more opportunities within the trading bloc of the EU and Europe. But as well, we are looking for other reliable partners, and we think that Northern American, Canadian, US companies can be the ones replacing a lot of value chains. And the demand for industrial goods and production technologies, supply chain management technologies will increase. The 5th trend is a trend we don't know yet, because we don't know which scenario will take place after the pandemic is over. How will our life and business change? Will it be still a global economy, or a more disconnected local one, or something in between global? And this, ladies and gentlemen, will have a big effect on certain sectors and the economy at all. But we don't know it yet. We'll see. Next slide, please. Let's look at the short-term potential losers and winners. I like this chart a lot, the Covidonomics chart, and just in case you don't know it, I just put it here because it's very, very clear. So you see on the left side, all the losers, again, short-term losers. So all the mobility industries, aviation, maritime, automotive, tourism. And then on the other side, the green ones needed during the pandemic, medical supply, food processing, healthcare, ICT, e-commerce, and in between, you see the agriculture, as already mentioned, education and energy. Next slide, please. Now we are looking more at the medium and long-term perspective for Saskatchewan companies. How is COVID influencing the advanced manufacturing sector? Prior to COVID, we already saw 2 trends. One is towards digitalization of industrial processes. And this, as already said, will be reinforced through COVID. The second is the pressure to comply with the European strategic objective of carbon neutrality in the next 30 years. So we see medium-term opportunities here for companies offering digitalization technologies, solutions for smart manufacturing. And just to put a number, only in my country, Germany, in the next 5 years, there will be expenditures of more than $100 billion by 84% of the manufacturers for their technologies. We need hygienic coatings in production after COVID, and we need all technologies for energy efficiency, renewable energy concepts for storage, and of course, all technologies for decarbonization of industrial processes, especially in the so-called more dirty and heavy industries, chemical, glass, lime, and cement. Thank you. Please, in the next slide. Let's have a look at agricultural equipment. Already before COVID, we saw an increasing demand for machinery and equipment. And as already explained, through the shortage of labor and the rising demand, a push towards higher efficiency, we see this trend reinforced through COVID. And this is why we see medium-term opportunities for automatization technology, robotics for agriculture, so-called agricultural 4.0, digital and precision farming solutions, and of course, everything that helps to optimize the supply chain in agriculture. Next sector, next slide, please. Let's have a look at mining. The mining industry in Europe is declining already since many years. The only thing that we are really good in and offering is machinery and safety equipment for mining. And we saw an increasing demand prior to COVID. The COVID impact here, infrastructure projects, construction was slowed down due to the lockdown. So the demands for all materials and supplies decreased. On the other hand, we saw a big need to ensure power and electricity, looking for alternatives for the lithium mining, for batteries. And this is why we see opportunities coming up for companies offering solutions for the digitalization of the mining industry. This is the trend, the first trend I named before already. Ecological mining, safety equipment, technologies helping to reduce the CO2 emission, and all technologies helping to cope ecologically with the mine water, and alternatives for the lithium mining. Let's go to the last sector of today. I chose the green, so-called green and red biotech, because this is the predominant one in your region. But the biotech sector is a quite stable one with high investment and a lot of R&D prior to COVID. Prior to COVID, in the so-called medical biotech, pharmaceutical biotech, the red one, the major pharma companies purchased the APIs, the actual pharmaceutical ingredients, abroad. Prior to COVID, the green biotech, the topics here were looking for ecological packaging, biosurfactants, research for alternatives for mineral oil and fibers. And the COVID impacted, it's an interesting impact, because here, this is an example for the cutting of interruption of the supply chain. The APIs supply from China and Italy disrupted completely almost. So of course, that means we need new suppliers for that. And of course, a lot of research now is done for COVID-19 treatments and for repurposing of drugs. So meaning to use drugs that we already know for new purposes. So we have a delay in other clinical trials and launches. In the green biotech, as already explained, due to the higher efficiency need, we have a demand for new seeds for higher yields. And this is why we see medium or long-term opportunities coming up for API supplies, for supplies of all the different technologies and equipment for the new research we are looking at during the pandemics. Solutions for biofuels, for biological resources, for the avoidance of waste, and of course, biotech for innovative crops and seeds to push the efficiency. Next slide, please. Let's talk about specific opportunities. And those are really just examples, because there are many more, but my time is already almost over. So I just put 3 here. Not a surprise, digital technologies, as already named during the trends at the beginning, in all the different areas, banking, cybersecurity, e-health, e-learning, e-commerce, self-checkout technology for retail, and many more. The second electronics component is, again, a result of the breakdown of value chains. We need more suppliers and alternative suppliers instead of them from China, for example, for new battery technologies. And the third opportunity I see coming up is in the logistics and storage field, because due to higher risk of border closing, delivery delays, and disruptions in production, we are in high need of new storage capacity technologies, warehouse interlogistics, and cooling technologies. Again, same as full web solutions to manage international transportation processes and real-time tracking. So the whole logistic and storage will change after COVID as well. Last slide, please, Sherwin. Yeah, what does it mean from a business development standpoint? To just wrap it up in my last minute, as you saw in my short presentation, market opportunities arise through the pandemic. Innovative technologies and solutions are needed to help for the restructuring and recovering to meet the challenges. North American companies, Canadian companies always have been important partners for European companies since decades. So, and probably due to the trends that will be increasing. Starting from spring of next year, the European economies will start hopefully to pick up again. So European companies will be open, of course, depending on their individual situation, how good or bad it is, are open and looking for new business opportunities in order to survive or even to grow after COVID. And this is why we highly recommend to start the business development now, not to lose time and opportunities. The early bird catches the worm. Of course, for now, it has to be in a virtual way from your home office, but it is possible. We have a whole toolbox available, for example, contactless business partner search, virtual trade missions that we can apply. And we, as in-market experts, are able to help you in all 47 countries. Of course, my analysis was quite a basic one in 15 or 18, 17 minutes. I'm now talking. Please reach out to us for a more detailed analysis of your individual situation. And we are more than happy to assist you. And maybe you show the last slide now. Here you can see my other 7 nice colleagues from Europe. They are all very experienced market experts in their markets, and they're more than happy to help you. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all the best of luck for your economies, for your businesses, for your business development worldwide, and in my case in Europe. Stay safe and healthy, and please stay optimistic as well, like I am, because better times will come up. Thank you very much. And now I turn it over to you, Sherwin, for the Q&A.
Linda, thank you very much for that presentation, for the complete, a 16-minute complete overview of Europe. We did have one question in the section where you dealt with specific opportunities. The questioner was curious to know if you can highlight some materials that will be required to be produced and for what industry sector to answer these needs.
Yeah, it's a question similar like yesterday. Yeah, of course, quite difficult to answer this question because it's a very diversified question, right? Basically, to talk about a general trend, we need a lot of intelligent materials in all the different sectors named here as the mobility sectors, automotive industry, aerospace, but as well in a lot of even shipbuilding, so all different sectors. Yeah, it depends really on the reshoring we need. And it's quite difficult to say today because, you know, in Germany, our first trading partner for imports is China. So we have to restructure a lot from there. Yeah, to change and import materials from other partners. And it's yet to see what exactly it is, because yeah, the picking up and the reshoring will take place, yeah, hopefully end of this year, but it's hard for me to say now. But of course, if you want, I don't know who asked this question, but please drop me an email or us an email so we can analyze your specific situation more in depth. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. There was another question. Germany seems to be the main trade show country for Europe.
Yes.
Do you have any word on the possibilities of trade events returning?
Germany is by far the biggest showcase country for trade shows. We very much believe in trade shows. This is why we have a lot of world-leading trade shows in my country. By the way, on the second place would be Italy, which is locked down now. We had to cancel or postpone almost all the trade shows, even the big Hanover show. The first time in 75 years that it is postponed. or not postponed, just canceled until next year. Of course, trade shows will take place again. The only trade show not canceled yet is Medica in November, the world leading trade show of medical supply, because this is, of course, a very useful show in this situation now. But I can recommend you to look on the websites of the trade shows, because many times they have a matchmaking platform there. For example, Hanover Show, industry show, the biggest industry show in the world, has Technology Cooperation Day, which is a platform for meeting. You can put in your profile, ask for for interesting partners, put in what you offer, what you're asking for. So even if trade shows are postponed, please have a look at them. The exhibitors directory are still online, and companies are very open if you just reach out to them. But be assured that we will have trade shows again starting from next year. Hopefully Medica this year already.
All right. Linda, thank you very much. We're going to move now to South America. Fabio Yamada is speaking to us from Sao Paulo. Fabio, you're on.
Thank you, Sherwin, and Linda, thank you for your great presentation. It's very interesting to compare presentations when you talk about medium-term, long-term. Here in South America, we are more into short-term opportunities, and we don't look at that. We always try to make our plans for medium and long-term, but there's always something happening in between that doesn't allow us to go that far. But well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Fabio Yamada. I'm the principal of Trade BRZ. I'm based in Sao Paulo, Brazil, but I cover other countries with reliable business partners in Chile, Colombia, Peru, Uruguay, Paraguay. We have a staff of 5 people working from Sao Paulo. Before somebody asks, yes, we have a person working in Argentina, but the country has several restrictions against international payments. So Argentina for us is on hold, as much as Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, or Cuba for the same reasons. Trade BRZ has been in business for the past 20 years in the region, and we have already represented more than 16 US states in Brazil, plus other international agencies. We are specialized in working with international companies, private companies, to facilitate their market access to South American countries, usually through sales agents, distributors, or even finding clients, and offering services such as custom clearance processes, registration of intellectual property, and in-country support. We also work with local companies if they are in need to invest overseas. And this is very interesting because going back a few months ago, we assisted a company, a Brazilian company that makes portable respirators to relocate to Fort Lauderdale. That was just before the COVID-19 crisis. That was in October, November last year. I don't need to say that they have been very, very successful. And they are in the middle of the hurricane trying to supply respirators all over the world. We also had very interesting cases of companies like a company that does dry cleaning on the fuselage of executive jets. So they have been very successful in airports all over the world. And we have several other examples to list. Next slide, please, Sharon. Our company, Trade BRZ, currently has contracts with 3 American states, Florida, Maryland, Colorado. We also work for the state of Victoria in Australia for trade promotion and foreign direct investment attraction. 2 U.S. agriculture agencies, the U.S. Dry Beans Council and the American Hardwood. And then we work with trade finance through US Exim Bank or the Canadian EDC or the Dutch traders or the German Herms through PNC Bank, and also in project finance with Castle Pines, an investment fund based in London for large infrastructure projects. It's a pretty broad outreach, but the reason is most of the time clients ask us how to find tools to collect payments on time. They ask us about how to fund large multi-million-dollar projects. They need to find solid, reliable partners that can participate in international bids. And they sometimes need access to CEOs of large corporations, governors, ministers, senators, project owners, etc. So we offer this broad package, and we have been very successful so far. Just to mention a few interesting projects that we are dealing in the region and worldwide. We are dealing with a soybean farm project in Argentina. Despite Argentina has been in trouble, the owners want to sell the project. It's one of the largest producers of soybeans in Argentina. We are looking at two port projects in Brazil. We are looking at an irrigation project in Turkey for $200 million. And a French real estate development in Thessaloniki in Greece, for instance. So these are large projects. Some of them have a good fit, maybe with the Saskatchewan economy. There are some opportunities for sure for companies that want to engage. But today's presentation is more about COVID in the region and where we stand right now. So if we look at the countries that represent the best in South America, according to S&P Global, the recovery was going to happen in 2021 around 3%. So because we are going down this year in 2020. Brazil represents 50% of the region GDP. So that's the powerhouse of the region, followed by Colombia, Chile, Peru, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Today, just to give you an overview of what's happening in the region, we are going through social isolation or social distancing, that's how it's called, for the past 4 to 6 weeks. So all non-essential services are closed, with the exception of banks, grocery stores, gas stations, public transportation in metropolitan areas, and some industrial companies are in operation. Other companies are closed, but working on takeaway delivery, such as service companies, restaurants, and school, colleges are using needed education. And it's very strange that hospitals' occupancy for elective surgeries have gone down and are now around 10%, and hospitals are even thinking of firing people, believe it or not. This is how crazy things are. Most of the airports are closed, except for domestic travel. I think this is happening in North America, Europe as well. And people are getting bored of staying at home. So they are all entertained by live performance, by artists that ask for donations to charity. So in a nutshell, social distancing is easy to say, but very, very difficult. We started with 50% adherence to social distancing, but today we are down to 50%. So if we go, when you look at this slide, so the stay-at-home proposal has demanded that countries that have some good budgets, or I mean, their budgets are in equilibrium, such as Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Peru. These countries are investing approximately 1 to 3% of their GDP. And this is really a major figure for countries that have limited access to funds. And if you think that the collection of taxes in 2020 is going to be reduced, plus the expenses in investing these funds in immediate relief to fight the coronavirus, that means that there's going to be very little public money to invest in infrastructure. So the source of funds for next year will have to come from international loans or from the privatization of current state-owned companies. So these are very interesting areas to look at. The privatization of good companies very likely will present excellent opportunities for M&A in the region. Just to give you some figures of how COVID is affecting the population. Brazil has a population of 212 million people. So far, we have confirmed cases in 100,000 people, and the death toll is around 5,000 people. So it's a ratio of 5% that's persistent all over the countries globally. In Peru, we have a population of 32 million people and 28,000 cases confirmed. And then followed by Ecuador, Mexico, Chile, Colombia, and Argentina. These are the countries that have been affected, but Brazil by far is the country that's suffering the most. And the peak of COVID very likely is going to be within the next couple of weeks, and then in the metropolitan areas, and then very likely it's going to spread out to the countryside. So let me go back to the presentation. Next slide, please, Sharon. So when you look at opportunities in 2020 and 2021, you can read the opportunities in the region in all these industries. And what I did was I highlighted logistics, and then the other common word that you're going to see is the word of productivity. So if there are companies in Saskatchewan that can add productivity in all these industries, or bring more efficient logistics to all these industries in the region, and they are quick to come to the market, there will be great opportunities within the next 18, 24 months for sure. So you can take a look at this slide. You're going to have a copy of this deck of slides after the presentation is over. But we are going to be here to discuss about each one of these opportunities. These are diverse areas of interest, from mining to transportation to pharma and vet and the healthcare industries. But we are open to discuss any possibility in detail for each of these industries. Next slide, please. So when we look at the industries, I try to highlight what's going on, and what's happening are like in the aerospace industry, the expected merge between Boeing and Embraer has been canceled last Saturday, and so very likely many mergers and acquisition processes are going to be, let's say, on hold for the next few months, given the liquidity crisis that we are going on. So it's going to be a very interesting time to see what's available and what opportunities for investment or to enter the market there are going to be. So I listed all these areas because in the next slide, you're going to see that South America basically is made of the production of agricultural goods and mining, plus the sectors, the public sectors, such as oil and gas and energy. These are the engines in the region. And of course, IT as supporting services. So I just listed a few industries to focus in the Brazilian market. And then on the next slide, you're going to see some opportunities in other countries. So as I mentioned before, if you have equipment for mining, equipment for agriculture, equipment for oil and gas prospection, this is a good region to explore. This is, of course, this region is not an easy region to penetrate, but things are getting much, much better these days. We have a less corrupt government. The red tape is being reduced year after year, and we see potential for North American companies to enter this market in a better position now. Next slide. So this is my last slide. So I just want to leave a message that South America is open for business in the second semester. So all shows have been rescheduled for the second semester of this year. Most of the countries have done their economic reforms before the virus outbreak. And even though the GDP this year is expected to go to -5, next year we expect it to grow around 3%, according to IMF and other sources. But to enter this market, all we ask is that you give us 45 days of notice, and then we'll be ready to deliver the projects that you're interested in. So thank you very much. This is what I had to share with you in my 15 minutes. And back to you, Sherman. Oh, I'm sorry. This is our last slide that shows all our IBG members. Ana is based in Mexico City. Ron is based in Toronto. Joe and Bruno are based in the US. So we have all these people. They're very experienced people covering the Americas. Thank you.
Fabio, thank you very much. We do have one question from one of our participants who is interested in the agricultural machinery side and wants to know the best way to deal with companies in South America. Do they go through a master distributor? Do they go directly to clients? What's the general path of accessing that market in your region?
The general, well, this is a country where face-to-face, or I mean, build trust is the right word. So it's a matter of finding a good sales agent that's going to be in contact with the companies. This is a huge market for agricultural products. Just the agriculture in Brazil represents 1/3 of the country GDP. And when you look at the region, it's very meaningful. So the right steps are we can search for a good sales agent. When sales start, then we move to having a distributor with local inventory of parts. And then finally, the company can decide if it's time to engage in third-party manufacturing, or even in having local manufacturing. The message is very clear. It's a very competitive market, It has barriers of entry for sure, but the payoff is here because this is going to be Brazil or South America is going to be the source of food to the world, followed by Africa for sure. So this is where most of the food is going to come from. So I think that this one of the effects of the coronavirus pandemic outbreak is that each region needs to strengthen its capabilities to deliver the best in the short term and be able to thrive and survive in the next few years to come. So I think this is the message that I want to leave with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Fabio. Appreciate your participation. I just again want to remind everybody before we move on to Supriya that if you have questions, please use the chat box and we'll try to get all of them answered between the sessions. So Supriya, you are now unmuted. Welcome.
Thank you, Sherwin. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to my colleagues in Europe. I don't think, except for Ken Yang, who is also for good morning, there's anyone for the good evening session right now. I'm Supriya Kanetkar, co-founder of SRK and Associates, an international business consultancy firm based in Bangalore, India. We have been working with different economic development agencies for the last 19 years since we established in 2001 and assisting foreign companies enter the Indian market. Although I'm based out of Bangalore, we have personnel in Mumbai, New Delhi and Pune. We cover mostly the Republic of India, but on case-by-case basis, we also assist companies in the SAARC region, which is our neighboring countries of Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, once in a while, Nepal. These are our major territories. Although I represent IBG India, today I'm going to talk to you about the Asia Pacific region and convey the opportunities that have been relayed to me by my colleagues in the Asia Pacific region, because as I speak to you, most of them are asleep. The regions and the countries that we would cover today, if you see the best from the map, we will cover India, China, South Korea, Japan, ASEAN, and Australia and New Zealand. The presentation would focus the COVID-19 situation in this region, the economic outlook in the post-COVID scenario, the opportunities for your businesses. I would like to discuss also in the countries specific potential opportunities that you would have. Next slide, please, Sherwin. This slide focuses on the COVID-19 situation in Asia. You would observe that the region represents most populous countries in the world. The population density in this region is also very high, but the region accounts about 6.5% of the total number of confirmed cases and about 4% of the total deaths in the world due to virus. Most of the countries, I mean, this is a remarkable achievement considering that you have 60% of the world's population and just 4% of the deaths. I mean, the numbers may be about 10 days ago, but most of the countries in the region have enforced the lockdown and very strict quarantine policies to flatten the curve. Some countries are still observing lockdown, while a few others have opened up essential businesses, of course, with precaution. I can tell about India. India is still observing a national lockdown, which is till May 3rd. However, in some districts where there are no incidences or no cases of COVID-19, there is relaxation given and some economic activities have been opened up. Especially our farming activity and the road construction in rural areas have been opened up, as well as the essential services are now operating. So you would see that with these strict measures, the Asian region has managed to flatten the curve. Next slide, please. This slide shows the economic outlook in the post-COVID era as well as in 2019. In spite of the slowdown, the global slowdown in 2019, you would see that the Asia Pacific economies did show growth. Of course, 2020, there is a big dip because of obvious reasons. However, in 2021, you would see a strong recovery, and this is very encouraging. I mean, many countries, for example, India is 1.9% growth in 2020, which would go to 7.4% in 2021, as well as countries like China, Japan, Australia, Southeast Asia. They all are showing positive growth in 2021. Next slide, please. Before moving to the individual country presentations and country-specific opportunities, I'm going to share with you some trends that would emerge in the post-COVID days. The first most important trend is the labor market would be adversely affected due to COVID-19. For example, in India, during the national lockdown, a lot of migrant labor moved from cities to their native villages in the rural areas. And they may not be able to get back to cities in the near future. So while unemployment is going to be very high in rural areas because these migrant labor do not have jobs, you would find the shortage of labor force in urban areas as well. So the manufacturing sector, you will see that the companies need to focus because due to this shortage of labor force, the companies need to focus on innovation, automation, use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these new techniques they need to adopt. I mean, so you would see that as a result of lack of labor force, automation and Industry 4.0 initiatives will get a renewed impetus. One more trend, you would find that the governments would also provide incentives and encourage industry to invest in rural areas. Currently, you would find that majority of the investment is concentrated in certain pockets, which are largely in urban centric. However, because there are no incentives to go to rural areas. However, you would find that because the migrated labor force need to give some employment, governments would create conditions that the industry would be able to move to rural areas to some extent. So COVID-19 will influence in favor of deconcentration of investments. Of course, there will be new research and development in the healthcare. The countries, various nations would like to invest in building a healthcare infrastructure. Food safety and food security would get all the more important. As all of us are working from home and we may continue to work from home in a cyclical lockdown situation, we would see that there would be a huge requirement for upgradation of technology. There would be requirement for improved bandwidth, data delivery, better telecommunication facilities. All this will become so important. Digital education, because for example in India, which education is a big industry, and currently the major discussion all about when the schools are going to reopen, and we see that they may not reopen until next couple of months. So digital education will require new technological platforms to deliver online education in the longer run. Another trend that I'm going to talk about is a bit disturbing, but that may happen as we continue to face shortage of certain things. There would be a demand for arms and ammunitions, as there will be a gap between demand and supply, as well as the gap between haves and have-nots. So as the disparity grows, there would be criminalization, or there would be like arms and ammunitions would increase. Next slide, please. Now we would focus on country-wise opportunities. These are mainly conveyed by my IBG partners in respective countries. IBG Australia feels, I mean, of course, all of you may know that Australia is the 14th largest economy in the world. And you would see that some promising opportunities here, for example, high-tech agriculture equipment, mainly because 95% of Australia's imports in agriculture machinery are all imported. So there would be a good opportunity for companies from this region for exporting to Australia. Similarly, the immediate need that Australia is facing is fertilizers and specialty chemicals. I was told that this is because the supply chain from China is disrupted, and there's an immediate need for these agriculture feed. Next slide to China. Yeah, Australia, in fact, there would be opportunities also in information technology, construction and road building machinery, as well as specialty vehicles. One interesting fact about Australia's vehicle, Australia imports all its vehicles. So, I mean, one could look at it as a tremendous opportunity. Next slide, please. China. I mean, China already has very good import-export relations with Canada. In fact, China is the second, China is the most, I think, third or fourth largest source of import from Canada for livestock and animal feed. Similarly, China does not have a very well-expanded agriculture machinery production, home production. So they rely heavily on imports. So your companies in this region will have opportunity to export machinery, agriculture equipment as well. Next slide, please. India, of course, as many of you may be aware, that it's the 5th largest economy in the world in terms of GDP, and one of the fastest growing economies as well. Already India is one of the largest export markets for Canadian pulses. I think especially the red lentil and yellow peas. Besides agriculture commodities, in fact, a very interesting development is taking place, that there has been efforts to foster new collaborations in the life science sector, especially in research and development, commercialization, as well as new partnerships in agri-biotech. Also, for exporting to India, there would be opportunities in agriculture equipment because India's farming sector is getting highly mechanized very rapidly because of the same reason that there's lack of workforce for cultivating agriculture. So there is opportunity for exporting ag equipment. Some of you may be familiar about the activities that Indian companies are already engaged in the oil and gas sector in Canada. India heavily relies on oil imports. In fact, I think 84% of India's oil is imported. This is in the next slide, Sherwin. However, there are some difficulties in exporting oil and gas from this part of the world to India, mainly because of the infrastructure. If there is infrastructure available to take the oil and gas from Western Canada to Atlantic coast, which is closer to India, the oil imports are also possible. There are opportunities for information technology, mainly because Government of India is implementing several initiatives for digitalization in the country. Also, the infrastructure projects are on, so there would be opportunities for exporting equipment related to construction and road building. Next slide, please. South Korea, which is the 12th largest economy in the world, and of course a very matured market. My colleague Ken Yang has provided some interesting trends about food consumption, and it states that the size of the food market is really huge. Considering, and they rely a lot on food imports. So considering the amount of imports into South Korea into food and agriculture, Kane believes that there would be a good opportunity for agri and food exports. Next slide, please. Japan, of course, third largest economy, again a very matured and developed market. Although most of their requirements are either met by local production or imports which are already established with other countries. Our colleague from Japan believes that there could be opportunities in especially the food sector, the food and agri sector, provided the companies are able to provide quantity, quality, and the price. So if these one can meet with their existing importers, you can still consider Japan as a region. Next slide, please. ASEAN region, very promising region, which covers several countries. Some of them are very well developed, like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, as well as this region has growing countries like Vietnam and Indonesia. So the region as a whole provides promising opportunities. In fact, in almost all potential sectors. That's what I learned from my colleague. And this slide and the next slide, I have listed some of these opportunities. So you would see that if there is opportunity in oil and gas sector in Indonesia, there would be opportunity in information technology in Singapore. So I have attributed, in fact, 2 slides here. You would see that there are opportunities in agriculture, mining industry, oil and gas, construction and road building. So in one or the other country, there would be some opportunities. Next slide, please. These are my colleagues from the South Pacific, Asia Pacific region. Sarath Menon from Southeast Asia, Angela Foley from Australia and New Zealand, Ken Yang from South Korea. I'm talking to you already, Yasushi from Japan, and Annabelle from China. Of course, the entire IBG team is very capable and competent, but I'm glad to introduce to you my colleagues in the Asia Pacific region who have more than 2 decades of experience in helping foreign companies to enter their respective markets. Most importantly, this region, is not only the most populous region, but you have 3 top economies of the top 5 economies in the world. For example, Japan number 3, China number 2, and India number 5 in terms of GDP. if you look at the top 20 economies, you would find South Korea, Australia, and Indonesia. So if you are talking to this team, you are talking to some of the most, I would say, potential opportunities economies, and we would love to connect with you. Of course, this presentation would be circulated, so feel free to get in touch with us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Supriya, thank you very much for that presentation. You had to cover a lot of countries in a relatively short period of time. We appreciate that. We do have one question from somebody concerning the issue of tariffs between Canada and the countries that you're involved in. We understand you may not have fingertip information about every one of them, but the concern is, does that hamper the ability to export product to your region?
I can talk for India. I would say Indian tariffs were notorious maybe 20 years ago when we had a closed economy. But as we started the process of liberalization way back in 1991, the tariffs have been gradually reduced. And you would find that it's reflected in the most part of the products, except for some products. I mean, I know that there is some ongoing issue with the tariffs with pulses, because Indian production of pulses, I mean, I know that Canada was one of the major exporter, almost 40% of our pulses came from Canada. However, about 2 years ago, the Indian government raised tariff on imported pulses, mainly because India also produced a significant amount. So unless there is this kind of a situation, the tariffs are not increased. So I don't exactly know about the other countries, but if you post this question offline, I'm sure my other colleagues will also be glad to respond.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We're going to go now to the fourth area of the world that we're covering, Middle East, Africa. And Richard Zerba, our colleague in South Africa, will pick it up from here. Richard, you're on.
Evening, everybody. And here in South Africa, we've got a hard lockdown. It's basically you can't get outside of your house to exercise. You can't take your pets for a walk. So my pet elephants have just torn the living room to pieces. So here we are. Here's a map of Africa relative to the size of Canada. The coverage area that our office covers in Africa is, and we've got staff in 14 countries in Africa, and Sherwin covers the Middle East portion, but our area really covers an area that's almost 4 times the size of Canada. So Africa is huge. It's got a lot of opportunities for Canadian companies, a lot of opportunities for Saskatchewan companies. Next slide, please. So we're looking right now at where is Africa going to be post-COVID-19. Most countries in Africa are under a very light lockdown. We've only had about 12,000 cases of recorded cases of COVID, and probably around 400 or maybe not even 500 deaths at all across the whole continent. So the continent's been very lightly hit right now because most of the countries went into an early lockdown, and people are being very good about self-isolating. So the other thing is that Africa's got an extraordinarily young population. The average age in Africa is 19.7 years old. So with that, we're not going to be hit very hard at all. Africa's got 1.3 billion people, and it's got 53 million people who are senior citizens, compared to Europe with 75 million people and 180 million who are seniors. We're actually in a position where we're not going to be hard hit by this from a fatality perspective. And if you look at other things that are relatively more of a higher morbidity, then this event that we're dealing with, we've got malaria, which kills approximately 1 million people a year. We've got HIV/AIDS, which in South Africa kills 125,000 people a year. That's 350 people a day. We haven't even got to that level with COVID. So there's a lot of things that we've got to consider, that in Africa, people have developed a very stoic and resilient attitude toward these kind of things. And we've got to understand that we're doing things in lockstep with the rest of the world. But I think that if it was just Africa, people would just let it roll. We would just, it's not going to be that big of a deal relative to other things. And the culture has accumulated that history. And so people here are very, they're not lighties. They're not lighties. They take things and they move and they start things up again when they have to. And tied to that, we've got an extraordinarily entrepreneurial youth culture. So just a few other things going on, but next slide, please. So the first thing is that COVID has hit the whole world economy. And in the Middle East and Africa, you can see that we're going to have probably, according to the World Bank, minus 2.1%. India is going to do well. Previous speaker, it's still going to grow at 2.1%. But across Africa, we're going to see very unlevel growth and negative figures. So places like Nigeria and Angola are going to be very hard hit because of the oil price. Yesterday, the oil price was at $10. Today, it nearly doubled, $17. Big deal. So your Albertan neighbors are going to be begging for groceries at your door, I think. But the thing is that we've got issues in Africa where we're going to be having a very unlevel development coming back. So East Africa may not go into negative figures. Parts of West Africa may not, but certainly the petro economies are going to be. Next. So some of the places where there is going to be a hard hit are places like Ghana, which has 8% growth, but they've got their debt denominated in euros and dollars, and typically when it's a risk-on situation, people have a aversity to going and holding on to developing country currencies. So the rand, the Ghanaian cedi, the Kenyan shilling, they've all suffered significantly in the exchange rates. And in fact, right now, we're actually seeing quite a big bounce back in the last couple of days. So maybe that'll continue with your with the buying power here in Africa. The other thing is that the amount of remittances from other countries back to African countries is going to be significantly altered. But this is the first real recession that Africa is going to be coming into in 25 years. But I'm expecting a very quick recovery from this here in Africa, just judging by what I'm going to be telling you in the next couple of stages. Next. Okay, some of the first things are that when there's destabilization, when economies fail, when the oil price crashes particularly, you have a lot of issues that come out of the oil producing countries of North Africa and the Middle East, and you get a lot of disconcerted unemployed youth. So Southern Africa's or Sub-Saharan Africa is going to be probably the border countries, especially where Muslim and Christian Africa join together. You're going to see maybe a bit more of dislocation and problems. You're going to see probably a lot more people trying to get into Europe. So this is one issue that is a negative thing that's going to be coming across in Africa. But I will say that Africa has become much more politically stable, particularly in the last 5 to 7 years. And a lot of these problems are actually dissipating. So through this, it's a blip in the trend. Next. Very quickly, by the year, Africa will have most of the world's new labor. Most of the world's new labor by 2050 is going to be in Africa. And expectations are that the population of Africa right now By next year, it's going to be bigger than the population of China. And interestingly enough, in another slide, it's going to be a common market. And so this is going to be a big deal. Africa, by population and geography, is right now the biggest market in the world. And it's going to be significant in terms of economics. So right now, the relative size of the market is $3.5 trillion. But that poses a lot of opportunity for people selling technology, agricultural goods, and other things into the rest of Africa. Next. As people do business, the good ones do better in times of hardship, and they come out of it a lot better. They do better business. The ones that have a hard time being transparent get crafty, and they become more corrupt. And this is just human nature. So those countries that were going through difficulties because of corruption before this issue are going to be harder hit by corruption probably after that. And those that are going to be do better now are probably going to be doing better. So we see Israel, where Sherwin is located, there in Jerusalem. We've got some of the GCC countries that are relatively easy to do business in. Those are the ones really to focus on. Next. And in Africa, the countries in yellow and orange are the best ones to focus on. I would argue that maybe the Democratic Republic of Congo should be maybe a red right now, but you know, things are doing business and the transparency and finding the right kind of partners, whether you're coming out of a crisis or not. People are going to be working off of their character. So always make sure you're finding the right person to get you into the right markets. Next. What's really important in Africa is that the culture has shifted very significantly, and the young people really value entrepreneurial outcomes and they value transparency significantly. So we've seen in Europe and North America that the youth are kind of dabbling in socialism. Not so in Africa. They've given up on that. Young people, there's about 1 million young people right now who are sitting there in their living rooms. They're not on Netflix. They're actually creating new businesses in Africa right now. So this is where the African youth culture is. Next. And young Canadians that are sitting there on their couches, hiding during COVID and binge watching Netflix and playing video games, keep in mind that there's millions of kids out there that can speak English and are tuned into global information right now, and they're starting businesses up. They're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. They don't have a lot of capital. They might have a good idea. And ideas are what move things in the job market and the creative elements right now. Next. So China's had a really big hard hit during this COVID issue with the way they mismanaged the secrecy of it at the entry point of the whole thing, and then how they've managed relationships with Africa during it, and a lot of the issues internally with African people who were residents in China during this period. This has been a big problem for China. And although China right now is the largest investor in capital investments right now, it's going to be taking a hit because of the China fatigue in terms of the commercial practices and the way the government has acted in previous to this and through this issue. Just an aside, there's a lot of American companies, a lot of European companies that have got in trouble for corrupt practices across the world and in Africa. And we can include SC Lavalin, which has been hit very hard with dabbling in corruption in Africa. How many Chinese companies have been affected by corruption in Africa by their own government? None, ever. So this is an issue. It's considered the way that business is done, and the Western way of doing business, which is to deal transparently, to work with really open minds together and partnering, that is really where the Canadians, next, Canadians can benefit. So this can be a really good entry point for Canadian business coming in. And the other thing is Africa is forming into a continental free trade area. So one common market, keep that in mind. It's a big deal. It's starting in July this year. It's being put off a little bit, maybe because of the COVID, because government people can't meet together, but it's got momentum. It's going to be forming into something similar to the European Union. This is really important. And so coming out of this, Africa's got energy and purpose. Those two things are going to create a lot of ability to get the economies rolling again. And don't think they don't have resources. The South African government has put 10% of its equivalent of its GDP into sustaining businesses during this time, just like the United States has, just like Canada has, or Australia. You know, these are it's a good thing, and so a lot of the countries are responding. Next. Quickly, we've been very successful over the last 21 years helping over 4,000 companies with projects in Africa, and in each of these sectors we've had millions of dollars of success stories. But let me tell you about the agricultural sector. Africa's got 60% of the world's available arable land. And as Fabio mentioned in his Brazil presentation, agriculture is going to be driving Africa, and it's going to be driving employment. It's going to be driving a lot of the economies here. Africans do not want used tractors. They're looking for good stuff. They're looking for the best implements. They're looking for specialty implements for specialty crops. So there is a market for used equipment, but there is a really good market also for innovation, for technology, for science, for bioscience, and so to throw statistics around doesn't really help. But every region of Africa's got different things, and we've got every kind of growing zone that you can imagine. The Free State here in South Africa is a lot like southern Saskatchewan in terms of what they grow. And then you've got tropical fruits in other parts of South Africa. And then you've got deciduous fruits that would grow maybe in the Okanagan Valley around Cape Town. So we've got all kinds of different climate zones here, just even in South Africa. And if you can imagine the kinds of ag equipment that's used, there's a lot of specialty stuff. Mining equipment, if you're not in the African mining segment, Africa's got 18% of the world's new mining activity. So if you sell mining equipment and you're not in the African market, you need to get into the African market and look at the metals prices. They haven't really gone down a lot. They've kept their pace. They haven't gone down like oil has. So there's a lot of mining activity that's happening. It's some of the first things that the governments are pushing and trying to reopen right now. Next, please. So Israel, the startup nation. And Sherwin is the one who really is the expert on this, and his office is based out of Jerusalem. And maybe if you've got questions for Israel or the other Middle Eastern countries where he's active, then maybe he could field those questions. But the economy is already ramping up, and consider that Israel was one of the first countries to go into a very hard lockdown. It was the first country to tell people that they had to self-isolate for 14 straight days when they flew into the country. And so it has succeeded because of that, and now it's able to come back out of this situation, and it's able to build back up. But what's really going on with Israel are the exciting life sciences and the high-tech IT opportunities that are going on there, and life science also including agricultural technologies. There's a lot of opportunity there for working dry land areas and picking up with all kinds of great projects that are there, and particularly working with tech firms and partnering with Israeli firms. There's a lot of opportunity, and they're also interested in coming into areas like Western Canada and working in partnership with Canadian companies. The other thing is that recently Israel's been very successful in liquid natural gas. finding those things off of the coast there, and so there's opportunities there where Saskatchewan companies could potentially involve. And keep in mind that Israel, like Africa, very price sensitive, but you know, Canadians are also price sensitive. Let's face it, we don't want to throw money away. We never want to. We're careful, we're cautious. And so keep in mind that cost benefit analyses are important, and that is actually what's starting to sell more important than just the price sticker from a very cheap import from another place. And keep in mind, when you're trying to sell your food products into Israel, it must be kosher. Next, please. So we've seen that COVID-19 has accelerated some changes but hampered others. Now keep in mind that there's a lot of opportunities with defense, safety, and cyber right across the Middle East. And there's opportunities in all kinds of other areas. But one thing that's really important, particularly for the wealthier countries that are oil exporters, they've got deep pockets, but the source of income has dried up. And so what do you do if you're the United Arab Emirates, if you're Abu Dhabi, if you're Qatar, if you're Kuwait? You've got billions and billions sitting there, but they desperately need to diversify their economies. And so those companies that have come in and are looking to buy machinery, they'll get subsidized. They'll get those, they'll get stimulus packages from their governments through their development banks and other institutions to assist with that. So it's really important that you understand that even if you want to look at an economy as a stereotype, don't really think of it as a stereotype. Every company has different requirements, and it could be that if you're looking to sell manufacturing equipment, that the Middle East could be a really good market. And think about tying manufacturing equipment to very cheap power and cheap energy. That's really how a lot of these countries are looking at their sustainable advantages. And also United Arab Emirates using special clay technologies to hold water into their ag so that they can become self-sufficient eventually, hopefully, maybe, I don't know. But otherwise, they're going to be looking for agricultural technologies that are going to be coming into Africa to sell food back into the Middle East. Again, sharp competition from all over the world. English is the lingua franca for most of the region, except Morocco and Algeria, where you can get by with French. West Africa is predominantly French. Most of Africa is English, though. And so with about 60% of the business being conducted in English in Africa, you really have a competitive advantage coming in with companies from overseas who are competing against you. Next. There's a lot of important projects that are going on right now and in the Middle East. So keep in mind that the opportunities there are based on a lot of the sovereign income that these countries have had, and they've got lots of money to invest. So they can afford to take a couple of years of income holiday based on oil prices coming down, and they're going to be diversifying. So a lot of the infrastructure build is going to continue. There's a lot of tech projects that are going to continue. Investment in arid land, agricultural development, as one project in Abu Dhabi mentioned, is going to continue. So the opportunities right across the board for infrastructure projects, Sherwin indicated here on his slide that there's 50 billion Israel presently. Africa's probably of $1 trillion of infrastructure, just waiting for investors and the right technology to come through as well. So looking at all of this, there's a lot of opportunity for Saskatchewan companies, and I know that a lot of you are working with small and medium-sized companies, but come in, fill in the cracks where they're needed, and you can become affluent filling in the cracks in some of these big projects. What we're here to do is to help you find the right business partners and the right projects so that you can get into these markets and do them successfully. I really am purpose-driven to find and help companies to find the right people in this market, because we do not deal with companies, we do not deal with countries, we deal with other people. And knock on wood, we've never had a problem with corruption ever once working with any of the companies that we've dealt with. So we've really, that's been one of our key focuses in doing that. So I'd like to also introduce you just visually to our colleague, Adam Hosier, based out of Saudi Arabia. There's a photo of Sherwin and myself in the region. And any questions right now, Sherwin, for us?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. We'll take them briefly. The first one is a general question. What will be the best way to approach the right partner in Africa?
The best way is to find the best partner. And so I indicated that there's a generational shift going on. Older people typically tend to be very collective, and they to be tied. Young people really value merit and transparency. And so there's a big difference. Do you want to get in with a young person, young company that's got high-tech aspirations and they want to be mentored? You want somebody who's well-established, keeping in mind that somebody who's well-established might have a history of being tied in with the wrong crowd.
Richard, we're losing you. So let me just step in here and take the second question. If Richard comes back online, we'll go back to this. The second question was, if an agri-food company wants to enter the GCC markets, what's the best country to target first? That's a very, very difficult question to answer, but I can tell you based on our experience, there's a lot of money available, obviously, and a lot of things have to be imported. There's very little local production. So our general approach is to go to the United Arab Emirates first, because they're very easy to deal with when it comes to North Americans. They have huge needs. They have a lot of money and willing to spend it. You really can't believe how much people pay for a bottle of mineral water in Dubai, and that's usually the best place to start. Richard, are you back on sound?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. So your sound cut off about the middle of your last sentence.
The first thing I would say is that go look for the people with the right character. Look for the people with the right character and that understand your technology. Don't really go looking for those people that purport to be well-connected. That's really my way of.
All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's our presentation for the morning, your time. We do appreciate the fact that you stayed with us. It's a long period of time to keep your attention. We're proud that you did and complimented. Everybody who's been registered will get a follow-up email. On that email, we'll send you the link to the video if you want to watch any part of it again, and also give you the opportunity to ask to receive the slide deck if you'd like that as well. So with that, again, I want to thank Brad and the people at STEP who have made this possible and invited us to do this today. And we look forward to working with you and hope that we'll be able to service your needs in the future. Brad, you want to close it up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you very much, Sherwin. And again, thanks to all four of our speakers and Sherwin specifically for helping put this together and the insightful presentations. A number of our speakers are in time zones quite different from us here in Saskatchewan. So again, thanks for making yourself available and sticking with us through the event. And as I sat here, I noticed a new feature on Zoom they call reactions. So I'm going to click that. That's where you can clap. So hopefully, thanks again. So if the other participants can thank their speakers in that manner. And as Sherwin mentioned, if anyone would like to connect with our speakers, an email will be coming out, or just send me a quick email and I'd be very happy to facilitate a connection. The coronavirus outbreak is is being felt globally, and certainly it's a serious concern for all of us. And I think it's, first and foremost important that we take the necessary steps to protect the health and safety of our families and our communities. But the second step to that is looking to the future. And from a business perspective and global economic perspective, we certainly are dealing with unprecedented and unpredictable times. And I don't think it's ever been more crucial to ensure we're all staying informed and working a little harder and a little smarter just to keep our business moving forward. Here at STEP, we continue to offer trade services, including market intelligence, virtual trade missions, exporter education sessions, market counseling, and so on. So we're certainly there to help our members move forward into international markets. And so with no further ado, I guess signing off from Israel, India, South Africa, Germany, Brazil, and Saskatchewan. Thank everyone for participating. So have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Be well.